For 5 years, I had been training to beat one of the hardest video games ever made, and I didn't even realize it. Saludos mi gente, greetings everyone. My name is Dream King, and today, I'm going to tell you about the time I beat Silver Surfer on the NES, and the modern game that unexpectedly made it shockingly easy for me to beat. When it comes to the age-old discussion of which video games are the most difficult to beat of all time, it is not uncommon to hear a little game called Silver Surfer mentioned. In general, a lot of the old Nintendo Entertainment System games, or Nintendo games for short, are notoriously hard to triumph over, and their reputation is so imposing that it even led to gamers eventually coining the term Nintendo hard, to describe games that are not only incredibly difficult, but oftentimes so hard it feels unfair. Silver Surfer is Nintendo hard. This title was developed by Software Creations, a British video game development studio that focused mainly on creating licensed movie and comic book games. Some of their most prominent work includes developing the fan-favorite Marvel Comics beat-em-up Spider-Man and Venom Maximum Carnage on the Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and the NES, and for us fighting game fans, their ports of Mortal Kombat 3 on the Game Boy, Game Gear, and Master System, though I don't think those ports were particularly popular with the hardcore fighting game fanbase. Silver Surfer launched in November 1990 on Nintendo's flagship console at the time, the NES, and it was a release that was exclusive to the United States. It's a fairly textbook shoot-'em-up game that sees the titular Marvel Comics superhero surfing through space on a quest to defeat an assortment of interdimensional ruffians in order to save this universe. During the game's intro, Galactus summons Silver Surfer and sends him on a mission to collect various pieces of the Cosmic Device, which apparently is the only way to stop the evil forces of the magic domain from breaking through and destroying all life as we know it. There are 5 stages that you can select up front, Mega Man style, and each one has its own respective boss as the face of it. These stages are typically broken up into 3 separate sub-levels: a horizontal auto-scrolling section, a top-down auto-scroller with a mini-boss usually mixed into the second section, and finally, another horizontal portion that culminates in the stage's final boss fight. Beating a boss rewards you with a piece of the Cosmic Device, and once the 5 main pieces are gathered, Galactus sends you to the far depths of the magic domain to hunt down and collect the final piece that you need to craft this crazy cosmic contraption. Translation, you're going to the Dr. Wily final stages of the game. Silver Surfer's infamous difficulty level was undoubtedly noticed by those who played it back in the day, but the Angry Video Game Nerds classic episode, which covered the game back in 2007, helped shine a very bright light on it and bring it into the mainstream. So what makes Silver Surfer such a ruthless video game? Well, its biggest issue is that you do not have a health bar in this game, and instead you die from taking just a single hit. A single bullet or an enemy running into you are enough to take you out. And in a shoot-'em-up like this where enemies and bullets are aplenty, it is impossible not to die a whole lot. We gotta try to take them out if we can. What the f***, dude? To make matters worse, Silver Surfer himself also cannot touch walls, ceilings, certain background set pieces, or obstacles, as they too count as a hit, and yup, you guessed it, cause you to die instantly. Too far to the right, you die. Too far to the left, you die. You die, you die, you die. You know the rest. And lastly, in order to continually shoot, you have to constantly tap the A button. You can't just hold down the fire button like you would in a standard shoot-'em-up, oh no. Instead, you can look forward to tapping the same button in quick succession, literally thousands of times in a row, if you're hoping to get anywhere in this game. Seriously, just look at how crazy my controller inputs look while going through a regular portion of one of the stages. Going into my first ever playthrough of the game, I was very familiar with Silver Surfer's reputation. I had seen the AVGN episode, heard a lot about the game's insane difficulty over the years, and have had a lot of first-hand experience with Nintendo hard games. So I knew that what awaited me was going to be a grueling test of endurance, mental fortitude, and finger fatigue. When I sat down to livestream my first playthrough of Silver Surfer back in September 2022, my goal was to beat the entire game in one sitting and cross it off the list of super tough video game challenges I've completed. In reality though, I figured I'd jump in, die more times than I could count, stream way longer than I intended to, then apologize to my 2 random Twitch viewers after ultimately failing to beat a single level. But much to my surprise, I did end up beating the game in one sitting during that livestream. Not only that, but somehow I beat the game in just 3 hours. which is pretty unusual for a first-timer. And while I definitely died quite a bit and took some time to figure out the game's various stages, by the end of it my flabbers were gasted because, for some reason, Silver Surfer really wasn't that hard for me, and it definitely wasn't the absolute demon people described it as. In fact, it was shockingly easy for me to beat, all things considered. But why? Why didn't I struggle as much as I expected to? Well, one of my favorite things to do in video games is to find some of the hardest challenges I can and torture myself by playing until I beat them. Whether that be simply passing games that are known for being incredibly tough, or creating my own stipulations and challenges to make the experience as difficult as I can, within reason. I just enjoy executing really hard to pull off things in video games for some reason. I cleared Castlevania 3's hardest route, beat Ghosts and Goblins twice to get the true ending, hit a 15-minute completion time in the original Ninja Gaiden, and even got the Fector's Challenge achievement for my wife in Stardew Valley, which is definitely its own story. And all of these challenges were just as hard or harder than I expected them to be. But let me try and explain how my brain works when it comes to this stuff with this example. In Elden Ring, another notoriously difficult game, you encounter an enemy called the Tree Sentinel very shortly after you begin your adventure. He is an incredibly strong mini-boss that you're not really supposed to be able to stand a chance against that early on. This Tree Sentinel is meant to be a very clear message to the player that firmly states you can and will be coming across areas and enemies that you will not be prepared for until you're leveled up and stronger, and you can hold every single L that comes with that. Despite me knowing this and Elden Ring being my first ever Souls game, I sat and fought that rat bastard tank of a horse-riding tool until I beat him. And instead of getting his sick armor, all I got was a weapon that I couldn't even use until quite a bit later in the game. But even with a lot of punishing video game achievements under my belt, that alone wouldn't really be enough to make Silver Surfer that much of a cakewalk, relatively speaking. There had to be something else. And it wasn't until after I ended the stream and stepped away from my PC that it dawned on me. What actually gave me the ability to blow through this infamously difficult NES game was Cuphead. For those unfamiliar, Cuphead is a run-and-gun platformer/boss rush game that couples excellent gameplay with a unique visual art style that was heavily inspired by the old Fleischer Studios and Disney cartoons of the 1920s and 30s. Oh yeah, and it is also bullshit hard. Cuphead is one of my favorite games of all time, and it's one I've been playing actively since day one. It's a fairly short game if you simply play through the 4 main islands and the DLC to beat every boss. But where this game shines is in its versatility for those who like to challenge themselves and push the limits of what's possible. The game has a ton of replay value for those who like to speedrun or just want to try and get the best rank in every stage on the hardest difficulty. And the boss fights themselves are so visually interesting and fun to engage with that it's hard to get tired of fighting them. My personal poison that I picked was the latter, and after beating the game on normal and expert difficulty, I jumped right back in and started gunning for S ranks against every boss in the game. And here's where Cuphead and Silver Surfer start to see their overlap. In Cuphead, there exist several boss fights that veer away from the run-and-gun style in exchange for a shoot-'em-up battle format. Cuphead, or whichever character you select, hops in a plane and takes on these bosses by flying around and shooting them as you try to clear the enemy's various phases. The layout and foundation for these airplane boss fights is nearly identical to Silver Surfer and many other shoot-'em-up games, but it's the requirements you need to fulfill to get S ranks in Cuphead that made the way I play the game particularly useful for my Silver Surfer playthrough. To get an S rank in Cuphead, you need to be playing on the highest difficulty level, beat the boss in under a certain amount of time, execute 3 parries, use 6 bars of your EX or super meter, and the kicker, have 3 points of health by the end of the fight. Which means that if you're not using a perk that increases your base health, you cannot get hit a single time during the boss battle. Let's just take a look at how easy the game makes that last stipulation for the player. I have spent hours upon hours grinding these boss fights, trying to learn the best strategies against them. And when I play, I usually don't stop until I get S rank. Even if I already got an S rank on that boss previously, sometimes when I'm hankering for some Cuphead, I just jump into any boss I feel like fighting and run a little S rank sesh. In doing so, I was forced to hone a number of different skills that perfectly translated over to Silver Surfer. Learning the Cuphead boss patterns and knowing how to recognize when they're coming helped me more quickly download the locations and timings of the various obstacles in Silver Surfer's chaotic stages. Against many of Cuphead's airplane bosses, there are sweet spots that you can put yourself into at certain points in the fight that leave you in prime position to still hit the enemy, but remain out of harm's way of all of the craziness on screen. In the final phase of Cuphead's Genie boss fight, you can fly down to the bottom right corner and consistently fire at Jimmy the Great, while avoiding the floating pyramids and most of the beams they shoot out, reducing the risk of being hit while also continually dishing out damage. Against Silver Surfer's final boss, when he stands at the far right side of the screen, I found that if you stay right above him and shoot down, he will continually shoot forward and diagonally upward, but the bullets can't really reach you. Understanding the concept of these sweet spots and practicing how to find them gave me the insight I needed to find similar areas in Silver Surfer, which made some particularly difficult parts of certain stages much easier to handle. There's also the ability to thread the needle that I absolutely had to sharpen in order to ever attempt getting S ranks on Cuphead's various flying bosses. Just like in the clip I showed earlier, there are several sections of these battles that require you to very closely and tightly maneuver through a sea of projectiles and obstacles in order to survive. And in Silver Surfer, not only is the entire game basically a constant threading of the needle, with ceilings and backdrops being a threat, but there are also portions where you have to tightly maneuver through obstacles to get onto the next part of the stage. And of course, the most important similarity between the two games, not being able to take a single hit. Playing Cuphead for so many hours, and essentially training myself to defeat these uber difficult bosses without ever taking damage, allowed me to walk into Silver Surfer and feel right at home. My first playthrough of Silver Surfer was 5 years almost to the day of when Cuphead was first released, and throughout that entire span I was unknowingly preparing myself to take on a classic game that is often considered one of the hardest ever made. I subconsciously developed a skill set that I didn't even realize I was developing, a skill set that lended itself so perfectly to a game generations old that it made one of the NES's hardest games feel completely reasonable to beat. And while skills can absolutely carry over across all kinds of different games, I don't think I've ever had an experience that lined up as well as Cuphead and Silver Surfer did for me. So that's it for me, y'all. I just wanted to share this story with you, and I hope that you enjoyed it. And if you're still watching this far into the video, thank you so much. Please be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, as it is a tremendous help. And hit the comments below and tell me about your best or worst experiences with either Cuphead, Silver Surfer, or both. Thanks again for watching. I'll catch you all in the next one.